Greetings and welcome to this week's Midweek Refuel, where we seek out the ancient paths in order to better understand today's spiritual landscapes. I'm Pastor John Woodfield of Remnant Church in Fuquay-Varina, North Carolina, and it is a real joy having you join us today. Please take a moment to hit the like and subscribe button. It does mean a lot to us. It helps get our name into the algorithms that you need to be in. Your support is very, very appreciated. And greetings to all our new Minds.com subscribers. We've had a flood lately. It's good to have you on board. All of our pertinent information can be found down in the description below this video. This particular reading tackles one topic that we have encountered several times in our reading of the Confessions. In fact, all Christians have encountered this battlefield or this battle if they are endeavoring to live a spiritual life at all. There's no way to live a spiritual life without eventually coming to this milepost. There is no avoiding the conundrum that this particular chapter presents if you are indeed striving to follow the Christ. We actually talked about this same topic. It was either last week or the week before. I forget exactly which one. We've talked about it a lot since doing this book. It's a constant component of the Augustinian story. Again, we are presented with the war and the battle between knowing and doing, or better yet, let's say it as willing and willing to will. And I hope that will make sense as we continue on in this lesson. Because the last few chapters did indeed, I'm going to say it's flirted with this dynamic. It was steeped in this dynamic between spirit and mind, because we've been here so often, or as Paul describes it as the war within. I was actually more drawn to the beauty of the language in this chapter and the elegance of of Augustine's quotes that we can pull from here. Straight out of the gate, we get this lovely string of words, quote, "As I stirred up my soul in the privacy of my chamber," that is my heart, "I stirred up a great quarrel in the house of my inner being," unquote. Does anyone talk like that anymore? I have underlined nearly every sentence of the next couple of chapters. The whole thing is like honey for the ears. Just 3 sentences down the line, 3 sentences later, we get this quote, "The untaught arise and lay hold of heaven, while we, for all our learning, have no heart. See where we wallow in flesh and blood," unquote. Man, I wish people talk like that again. Augustine is reaching the apex of his tortures. And if you're on a spiritual journey, you should be at times tortured. The hounds of heaven have come for you, and the hounds of heaven have come for him, and he is defenseless against their jaws. I watch people all the time fight and struggle with the inner voice and the voices from outside. But they give in to the psychology of the day. They give in to the statistics of the day. They give in to the peer pressure of the day, the sociology of the day, instead of just doing what the inner voice says, doing what your soul knows is right, whether you can make word sense out of it or not. And to do that is to obey the will of the Spirit every day, to remain, as the scripture says, in constant communion with it, or constant prayer. It used to be that the inner voice was the one voice we trusted out of any voice. We actually worked very hard daily to train ourselves, our children, and others to tune into the inner voice. Now, in this world of multiculturalism, materialism, nonstop entertainment, and globalist and satanic agendas, we have been trained to believe that it is the outside voices that are trustworthy, while having our inner voice demonized by every professor, teacher, globalist who needs to kill the truth in order to have a job. I have sat with people who are in constant emotional and mental turmoil, fighting like banshees to silence that inner voice because it tells them the uncomfortable truth that they are being lied to by the outside voices. They would rather believe that their inner voice is the imposter rather than believe that politician A, school teacher B, or counselor C are just as ignorant and lost in sin as you and I are. My whole life has been spent watching the media, the school systems at all levels, from K through postgraduate, and the government itself do everything within their power to invert the structures through which we learn, live, and find sanity and power, the still small voice. What Augustine is experiencing is, for him, reaching critical mass. It's becoming unstoppable. Every person that I know who actively endeavors to walk the spiritual walk, the holiness path, reaches critical mass eventually. And then something else has to happen. Everyone has their Pauline war to fight, or everyone is going to go through what Paul taught if they are a Christian. If they are a Christian and if you are a Christian and you have not reached this milepost, then you've been slacking. Get to it. Listen to Augustine describe this unstoppable spiritual inertia within him. He writes, quote, "I was sick with a frenzy that was my cure, dying to gain life. I knew what evil was. I knew what evil I was, but not what good I would soon be." Unquote. Augustine goes on to describe the sin state as only Augustine could. What Augustine described should make any sojourner of the mind and the soul pause and take stock. The mind is not only a maze, it is a maze with no escape. Listen to this devastating witness and confession from Augustine. Quote, "There were, therefore, many things that I did, in the case of which the will to do them was not the same as the ability." Unquote. He continues later with this, quote, "My body more readily obeyed the slightest will of my soul and moved its limbs when ordered than my soul itself performed its own will, however great that will might be, if it only willed to do so." Unquote. It gets worse. Listen to the next beautiful quote and despair. Quote, "The mind orders the body and the body obeys. The mind orders itself and it resists." Unquote. And there is the chains and bondage into which we are all born through the sin of Adam. We have will. We just don't have the power to will. We are stepping into quite the quagmire now. We are hitting rock bottom. We are hitting natural depravity, original sin. If you will to move a hand, it moves with seemingly effortless ease. Augustine says it obeys like a slave. But what if you have broken it or damaged the nerves? Well, then willing it to move and it actually moving become two very different things. Will is not ability. That is why free will is not carte blanche. You might will to fly, but your ability to fly is what will dictate the situation. You will not be happy. But there is another kind of willing that must be understood as well. You will your hand to stop, and all things being equal, it stops. However, you will yourself to stop smoking, and all of a sudden you have entered into a battlefield at the real center of the battle. You think you will it, but you don't. For if willing was as simple and easy as telling a hand to flex its fingers, then telling the hand to leave the cigarette in the box should be just as easy. but it's not. For you must will to will. And when you get to this level of the spiritual dynamic within yourself, you should begin to despair, for your state is becoming known to you. Once you thought you had free will. Now the terrible feebleness of your imprisonment begins to dawn on your consciousness at last. Even if you could unlock the door of sin, you would still be powerless to walk out to freedom. Or you can do like the world does. Throw up your hands, normalize your condition, and take antidepressants and amphetamines to shut the inner voice down as quiet as you can get it, and join the circus of lemmings in their cages. One of the voices has to be shut down. One of them has to be shut down, or at least squelch, or you will go insane. I know it's a short lesson today, but the natural order of Book 8 requires that we stop here because it gets into other larger topics that would be too long for today. So turn, if you will, to Book 8, chapters 8 through 9. You can get a copy of this great book from Project Gutenberg. As I stirred up my soul in the privacy of my chamber, that is my heart, I stirred up a great quarrel in the house of my inner being. Troubled both in my looks and my mind, I burst in on Alypius and exclaimed, "What is it we're enduring? What is it? What have you heard? The untaught arise and lay hold of heaven, while we, for all our learning, have no heart. See where we wallow in flesh and blood? Are we ashamed to follow them merely because they've gone first? Should we not rather be ashamed not to follow them?" These or some such words I spoke. Then I was swept away from Alypius by the surging tide of my hesitation, even as he stared at me in silent astonishment. This was not my usual tone. My brow, cheeks, eyes, color, the pitch of my voice, all these bespoke my thoughts more than any words I uttered. There was attached to our lodgings a little garden. We had the use of it, along with the whole house, for our landlord, the householder, did not live there. It was to this garden that the tumult of my heart bore me. There would be no one there to hinder my blazing indictment of myself until it reached an outcome. What outcome you knew, O Lord, but I did not. I was sick with a frenzy that was my cure, dying to gain life. I knew what evil I was, but not what good I would soon be. So I went off to the garden with Alypius hard on my heels, for his presence would not deprive me of privacy. And when would he ever abandon me in that frame of mind? We sat down as far from the house as possible. I groaned in spirit, full of the most turbulent anger that I was not entering a covenant and compact with you, that state of being for which all my bones cried out and extolled to the heavens. But neither by ship nor chariot nor on foot had I progressed any nearer to it than I had gone from the house to the place where we were sitting. To progress towards it, indeed to attain it, was nothing other than the will to progress, but with a will that was strong and whole throughout, not a will that was twisted and tossed around, wounded in part, caught in a struggle between rising and falling factions. Moreover, despite the tides of hesitation on which I drifted, I was physically able to do many things which people may at times have the will to do and yet be unable. If, for example, they do not have the limbs, or if they are constrained with bonds, or enervated by sickness, or hindered in some other way. If I tore my hair, if I beat my brow, if I knitted my fingers and clasped my knee, I did so because I willed it. It was possible, however, for me to have willed it and not done it if my limbs did not move in obedience. There were, therefore, many things that I did, in the case of which the will to do them was not the same as the ability. Yet I did not do what was both incomparably more in keeping with my purpose, and which I could do as soon as I willed it, since as soon as I willed it, I would will it wholeheartedly. My body more readily obeyed the slightest will of my soul and moved its limbs when ordered than my soul itself performed its own will, however great that will might be, if it only willed to do so. Whence is this strange situation, and why is it so? Let your mercy shine out and let me inquire. If the hidden snares that are man's punishment and the deep shadowed tribulations of the children of Adam can respond, whence is this strange situation and why is it so? The mind orders the body and the body obeys. The mind orders itself and it resists. The mind orders a hand to be moved, and this is accomplished with such ease that its authority can scarcely be discerned from that of a master over his slave. The mind orders the mind to will. It is only one mind, but it does not do as ordered. Whence is this strange situation, and why is it so? I repeat, the mind that gives the order to will could not give the order if it did not will to do so, but it does not do what it orders. It does not will with its whole being, therefore it does not order with its whole being. The mind orders insofar as it wills, and its orders are not obeyed insofar as it does not will them. For it is the will and nothing else that gives the order that the will should exist. If the will were a full will, it would not give the order that the will should exist, since it would already exist. It is not, therefore, such a strange situation that one should will and not will. It is a sickness of the mind, which, even when uplifted by the truth, does not fully arise, being weighed down by its habits. It is a sickness of the mind. To be more exact, it is the sickness of the mind. All ancient religions try to deal with this situation. All poets of any worth have lamented the sad state of man. From Homer to Christopher Nolan, great writers and great storytellers have used this fallen state to appeal to the inner struggles of their audience and their congregations. Here's the good news. While all these other writers, poets, and songwriters tell us about this fallen state, there was one man who freed us from it. Augustine says that the mind, even when uplifted by the truth, does not fully arise, being weighed down by its habit. Are you weighed down by your habits? If so, would you like to be free? In John Bunyan's Pilgrim's Progress, Christian, the main character who is escaping the city of destruction, has his burden, his weight, removed from his shoulders when he at last comes before the cross of Jesus Christ. I wish I could tell you that there was an easier way than the cross. I wish I could tell you there was an easier way out of the maze. But I am afraid the only way out is up. Up to Golgotha. Up to blood-soaked tree. Up to the man who cries out, my God, why have you forsaken me? The only way out is up. And the only way up is Christ. And Christ, he's King. Hail to the King.